So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 419, and yeah, this is a crazy chapter. Not only do we have the return of All for One, but the potential loss of the main antagonistic force, as well as the main character losing something very crucial themselves. And we'll be talking a lot about what goes on in this chapter, but first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and I'm here to cover and do my review for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 419, titled Design. And with that title in mind, you can probably guess where this is going, especially when we have the manipulator All for One returning back to the story. And for this type of review, I'm gonna have to go over it pretty much in order because there's a lot that I really want to go over in this chapter, and I don't want to miss any of these crucial plot points. So we're going to be going in order down the line in this chapter and talk about it. So let's just dive right into it. Also, forgot to bring this up, but we do have a cover page for My Hero Academia, and yeah, it's a very cool image. We have an image of Deku going up against the new reimagined version of All for One. It looks cool, and I just wanted to bring it up before I forgot. And to start off, even though we're going to be going in order, there is a big thing that we need to talk about, which is the return of All for One. And depending on if you like it or dislike it, we have to accept the fact that All for One, from the beginning of this story, has had a crucial part in shaping the story as he is. And that the best comparison I can make for All for One in this chapter and in the story is very much what Aizen was for Bleach for up until the actual Fullbringer arc, where you have this individual that is in the background with this mastermind ideology and the ability to manipulate people and to pretty much sway and move the story in a way that benefits him the most. This applies to both Aizen in Bleach and All for One in My Hero Academia. And what makes this comparison even more just is what All for One does is very similar to what Aizen does in Bleach, which, spoilers, Aizen is assumed to be the creator or put everything in place that led the creation of Ichigo. And to a certain extent, All for One has designed a Tomura Shigaraki or Tenko Shumura to be the vestige that is supposed to be the vessel of All for One, the person. And in this chapter, we pretty much get a good understanding of what that plan is and how All for One tries to instill in Tomura Shigaraki that he really had no purpose besides being the vessel of All for One, that everything that happened to him was all due to the design and the ploy and the creation of All for One, and that everything that he did was catered by All for One himself. And that Tomura Shigaraki is trying to comprehend this, and he's questioning, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And we get a pretty much detailed understanding of what led Tomura Shigaraki or Tenko Shimura to become the person that he is. And it all boils down to All for One realizing that he needed a strong will to take One for All away from All Might, but more specifically, to obtain his brother. And it all started with getting the alias of Daigoro Banjo's lariat and in Tayutai Gaien, where it was at that moment, as well as All Might chasing him, where he realizes that he needed to cultivate the desires and to create someone with powerful emotions and to pretty much suppress the id and to nurture a seed of hatred. And that he saw this hatred beginning in Kotaro and building a relationship with him, and that in a way he couldn't get to Kotaro's daughter because she was already raised and nurtured, but that she could do it to the unborn son of Kotaro. And the implication is that All for One forced Kotaro to have a second son via Shigaraki, Tomura, Tenko, and that because he formed a close relationship with him, he was able to, at birth, steal the dormant quirk inside of Tenko at that moment, and pretty much cultivated the line that would lead to Tomura eventually killing his parents. he probably allowed for Kotaro's more darker ambitions to come to light. He was responsible for the separation of Tenko from his friends and was the main reasoning why, and it's confirmed, that the individual that brought Tenko back home was All For One himself. And how it actually confirms something else, that there is a connection between All For One and the individual of Overhaul, where it is confirmed that he did give Tomura Tenko decay, but that decay is only half of what the original quirk was, which is the quirk that we saw with Overhaul. The ability to destroy and then recreate. And that now Tomura was cursed with a fake copy of his own quirk. And with that, you just have Tenko Tomura just come to the realization that all of the tragedies, the tribulations, and that the things that he wanted to reject in the world was all manufactured in a way by All For One. And this leads to Tenko in the Vicious World to break apart and be destroyed, implying that Tomura Tenko is no more and that he began to be vanished and deleted. And there is evidence for this being the case. If we remember correctly, All For One did say that he wanted to give his secondary quirk to Tomura Shigaraki before his original body was destroyed, and that this was his backup plan. And just to understand, this isn't the first time that All For One has done something like this, so this is very much tracking with All For One as a character, because he did it with Endeavor, with what he did with Dabi, and did it with All Might with what he did originally using Kotaro Tenko Tomura, with the connection that they have to his mentor. She is the 7th user, Nana Shimura. So yes, with that being a major reveal, this is something that we really need to understand, that whether you like All For One or not, this is the direction that Horikoshi has been planning throughout the entire series. That All For One is a manipulator, and that he has been manipulating Tomura this entire time. And to go on a slight tangent, we have to talk about whether or not Tomura Tenko has actually disappeared, because there is an implication that he is no longer here, with something that we're going to talk about later, with Tomura's decay no longer being inside of this new individual that we are going to be calling All For One. But to me, it seems as if what we also get is that there's probably still a little inkling of Tomura Tenko still in there. And that because he still exists, most likely within inside of this body, that's going to eventually lead to the downfall of All For One. But it's going to be a little while before we actually reach that point. But I do not think that Tenko Tomura has actually disappeared, especially for what we get with the next part of the chapter, where we get some confirmation that potentially Yoichi is gone, and that All For One has lost what he has sought out the most with his medium part of his plan, which is to steal One For All and get his brother back. And it's also confirmed that the psychological damage has actually had a physical effect on Tomura's body, as we see that the body itself has changed and modified in a way to resemble more of what All For One looked like than it looks like in respects to what Tomura Tenko used to look like. But what is even more important is the idea that decay is also gone. And if decay's gone, then the implication is that Tomura Shigaraki is also gone. But the fact that in the speech bubbles, you still hear the screaming can imply that Tomura Tenko is still there. And that now All For One has reached a point where he doesn't really care about anything anymore. That his final goal was world domination, but that there is no meaning to it. Now that he's lost One For All and his younger brother, it's just empty for him to take over the world. All For One had a purpose, and now that purpose is pretty much gone, so now he's left with just the base urges of taking over the world. So, I do think that Tenko is still in there, but this is something very interesting, because the psychological damage has done something to All For One, but also to Deku. Because as All For One is being screamed at back Deku is like, I won't let you, as he collapses to the ground, where we realize that Horikoshi has done the unthinkable. An idea that people have had throughout the entire series, that Deku will lose his arm, was only half right. Deku does lose an arm. He also loses another arm. I'm gonna be honest, this was shocking when I realized what Horikoshi has done. There's a lot that we can talk about with this. Will Deku permanently be armless? most likely than not. But I will not rule it out completely. Why? Because we've seen that many characters within the final war are going to have permanent scars, and that people would argue that Deku can't be a hero with both of his arms gone, but we have to remember that there are characters who have literally lost limbs and can still act as a hero. Aizawa, which we'll get to him shortly, Mirko, even Ectoplasm is a double amputee with both of his legs gone, but was still able to act as a hero. And even though Deku has lost both of his arms, that does not mean that he can't fight, because remember, he didn't learn just to fight with his arms, he also learned how to fight with his legs. And this ties into another implication that people have, which is that Deku can't fight anymore because he may have lost the quirk of One For All. And there is a possibility that he has lost the quirk of One For All, or what we could say is that One For All has been incorporated into Deku and is now his quirk himself. And the reason why I would say that this is the case is because in this chapter, it's established that even though Tomura, Tenko, had a quirk and it was taken away, when he was given someone else's quirk, it still became a part of him. His vestige is the representation of decay, and he was still able to use the quirk. And via that logic and idea, Deku, which is a vestige and is connected to a quirk, could still have the quirk inside of him. So he may still have that power, if not the ability to transfer it to someone else, but the ability to stockpile. And this could also be the explanation for why One For All, which should be the combination of two quirks, only had the single vestige of Yoichi, because it eventually became and incorporated into Yoichi as his quirk. Ergo, he may not necessarily be able to transfer the power, but he can still have the stockpiling aspect of the power, which means he may still have the power within inside of him, because that power may not have been transferred over to All For One. So if we go by that logic, yes, Deku doesn't have his arms, but he can still, in theory, fight with his legs. But still, the fact that Horikoshi even decided to do this really just shows how far he's willing to go to just show that this final war may have actual lasting consequences. But yeah, there's a very high likelihood that Eri is going to rewind Deku's arms, and if not, Deku could just refuse and have them be a reminder of this war, and that the consequences that has happened do have something that will be long lasting. Also, something that I just forgot to bring up is that through some means, All For One was able to form a hand around his mouth to prevent the screaming inside of him, and yeah, no, that just looks aesthetically cool. I cannot deny that. But yes, Deku has lost his arm, and more importantly, his hands, which have had a running motif in My Hero Academia. So the loss of his hands is sort of symbolic of Deku losing the ability to comfort the potential screaming child inside of All For One, but also losing the ability to comfort people in general. But even then, we still get to see that Deku is still the same Deku that he's always been. While yes, he has lost his arm and is unable to fight using them, that's still not going to stop him. Because remember, in the first war, he could barely use his arms or his legs, but was still able to use Black Whip with his tongue. And this is the same Deku who will even fight while not having a quirk, as from chapter 1, we saw him jumping into a battle that he couldn't win because he just has that drive to save. And Deku, even in this state, still has that drive to continue to fight on. And as All For One begins to mock Deku, saying that, yeah, you were literally born quirkless and like you were born to lose, and it's only people who have lost something that become stronger, he's planning on attacking Deku in this moment, and we get something amazing. Because Sero, Ojiro, and Sato come in out of nowhere. Sero prevents All For One from attacking Deku in this moment, saying that he's ready to save him, as Ojiro and Sato come in from behind and just strike them with a tornado's hail dance, and Sugar Knuckle sending this version of All For One flying. And as Deku is calling out their names, remember who I said would come back towards the end of this chapter? We have Aizawa coming in saying, Midoriya, sorry to keep you waiting, as he comes out of a portal, which is most likely the portal created by Kurogiri. And yeah, with that final part of the chapter, the heavy implication is that within the next chapter or two, we're going to be getting a flashback to seeing how they came to this point. How Sato, Ojiro, as well as Sero, as well as Aizawa came to control Kurogiri, and then eventually came to the location to help and save Deku. And the implication being that not only are these heroes here to save Deku, but potentially even a lot more heroes. But not only that, but there's also the implication that other heroes may be coming to Deku's location to help fight against All For One again. And how this may be a repeat of what we saw with the other heroes fighting against All For One, but they were doing it more separately. But this could potentially be the entirety of all of the heroes that are still standing going up against All For One, or at the very least, the individuals of Class 1A that are still standing. And how this could be leading into all of Class 1A and Deku being the heroes to finally defeat All For One in the end. But yeah, this is kind of my review for this chapter. This is going to be a lot longer because there's a lot more for me to talk about. And even then, I didn't really cover everything in this video because guess what? I forgot to bring up the popularity poll. So I'll keep it brief. I'll just go through the top 10 just real fast and get to my final thoughts. And start off, Bakugo is in first, Deku is in second, Shoto's in third, Darby's in fourth, Hawk is in fifth, Endeavor is in sixth, Kirishima is in seventh, Ida is in eighth, Ochako is in ninth, and weirdly enough, Shoji is in 10th. And that is the most surprising and the one that I enjoy the most. And as for some honorable mentions, Toga and Shigaraki are in 16th and 17th place. Rody is in 20th place, right in front of Sero. And 30 is Mirio, preceded by Tamaki, Hagakure, and Chronostasis? Yeah, the Japanese fan has weird favorites, but you know what? Shoji in 10th is all I need to know. But yeah, overall, I can say that I really enjoyed this chapter. I enjoyed the risk that Horikoshi took, not only just bringing back All For One, but actually taking the initiative of potentially having a long-lasting consequence of destroying Deku's arms and potentially getting rid of his quirk. Now, I do not think that he or Tomoe Shigaraki is gone, but I do think that Horikoshi is setting up this final battle to be nothing less than a spectacle. And I can't wait to see where he's going with it in the next chapter because we are not going to be on break next week. But yeah, really enjoyed the chapter, really enjoyed the art, really enjoyed what Horikoshi is going with the story, and I may be in the minority, but you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm enjoying the story, I'm liking the direction that Horikoshi is taking the story, and that's not going to change because I'm just enjoying the story and enjoying the ride because I love My Hero Academia. But yeah, let me ask you this. What do you think of the chapter? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? And do you enjoy them bringing back All For One and getting rid of Deku's arms? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!